Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Many of you had asked me about how I studied for the LSAT or the best way to go about it, so I thought I would make a little bit more of a detailed video about my process. Keep in mind that I took the LSAT a couple of years ago at this point, and this is just covering the specific way that I personally prepared for the LSAT. It's not going to be the way that works best for everyone, but I thought a little bit more detail about the process would be helpful. The first thing to note is that the LSAT is very different from a lot of the other standardized tests you may have taken in your life. This law degree is my third advanced degree, and I have taken many standardized tests over the years, including the PSAT, the SAT, the ACT, the GRE. Anyway, it was a lot. But the LSAT actually required a very specific approach and dedicated studying time in a way that the SAT or the GRE, which test sort of basic general knowledge, did not. The first thing I started out with was a basic Kaplan book. I will try to link the product in the description box because I don't remember the exact name of it. It wasn't very helpful to me personally, but it was a decent place to start because it gave a very general overview of the test, what the sections are, how many sections there are, how much time you have, that sort of thing. I basically check that book out of the library and page through it. When you approach taking the LSAT, you have to think about your goals, including your goal score. It's helpful to have that in mind. I mean, when I was taking the LSAT, I specifically wanted to do as well as I could because I wasn't planning on going to law school unless I got into a really top one. So when I looked at the schools I wanted to go to, I noticed that most of them accepted LSAT scores in the 95th percentile or above. So that was my goal score, 95th percentile. And I ended up landing somewhere in the 98th percentile, which put me in a very strong position to apply to schools based on other things in my record, such as my transcript, my extracurriculars, all of that. The LSAT is just one factor in your application, but it is a fairly big one, and I believe, although I'm not sure, that it counts for more in your application than the SAT would on your college application, for example, because law schools do actually put stock in that score. A little bit about the specific resources I used. As I mentioned, I started out by glancing through that Kaplan book, but when it came to actually preparing in earnest, I focused on three main resources. The first one was the collected actual past tests that the LSAC puts out. They're sold in books of 10 tests, I believe, and they range several decades. So I would recommend basically starting with tests that are older and saving the most recent tests as you get closer to your test date so that you have fresher, more relevant material to practice on. I also used a book by Mike Kim, which I'll link in the description box below. I'm not sure that this is the best absolute book out there. I mean, I didn't look at that many, but I did look at the Power Score Bible and found it pretty confusing. There seemed to be a lot of jargon created by the book writers specifically just for studying for the LSAT, and it didn't feel like we really needed all of that. And I also used 7sage.com, which has a course, but I didn't use the course. I used the free videos on the logic games. They have really nice, although very fast-paced, explanations of each logic game in the practice tests. It's helpful to take one early baseline test just completely cold so you get a sense of how you would do without any preparation, and that's your baseline. But a lot of the resources, such as the Kaplan book, such as Power Score Bible, such as different courses out there, they really are geared toward helping you achieve a slightly better than average score. But if you have a very specific score in mind, like really on the higher end of things, the classes and some of the books may not be as helpful. It really comes down to setting yourself a schedule and reviewing the questions that you miss very carefully. At the time that I took the LSAT, it was offered 4 times a year. It is now offered many more times than that, which is a great thing. I think you can just check lsac.org to see, the locations and the general times. But some of the tests are disclosed and some are undisclosed, which just means that after you take the test, the disclosed options will give you your right and wrong answers back, and the undisclosed ones will just give you your score with no analysis of how you did. The distinction between disclosed and undisclosed tests really only matters if you're planning to take it again and you want to look over whether there was a pattern to the kind of questions that you missed. But in general, I don't recommend taking the LSAT that many times. Schools will see, I believe, every score on your record, and it doesn't look good to take it really more than twice. I did take it twice, so I took it once in February, which was a morning test, and once in June, which was an afternoon test. And The afternoon test I did a lot better just because I'm not really that much of a morning person and I think better in the afternoon. And of course, also I had more time to study. Leading up to those 2 tests, I studied probably 2 to 3 times a week for the 6-month period leading up to the test. It's kind of a lot, but I had a lot of time. Each time that I studied during the week, I also wasn't studying for, like 5 hours straight. I think that leads to a lot of burnout. I would do, one section of one test and then check my answers and then go over the reasons why I missed the questions that I missed. And then probably once every 2 or 3 weeks, I would take a full practice test under timed conditions. My method was pretty simple and straightforward, basically what I just described, taking a lot of practice tests. In some of the courses that are out there, I think they give you maybe 7 to 9 or 10 practice tests built into the course, and I was lucky enough to have a really good friend who had just taken the LSAT and applied to law school right before me, and she advised me that that would not be nearly enough. Of course, this is going to differ from person to person, but I personally took probably 30 to 40 practice tests before feeling really comfortable. I wanted to consistently be scoring, plus or minus 2 or 3 points from my goal score before going into the LSAT. So I didn't want to, let's say, have a goal score of 171 and go into the test never having scored above a 171. I wanted to consistently be hitting 173, 175, just so that I could account for some test day jitters and that sort of thing. When you review your missed questions, it's really important to fully think through why you missed it, not just register that you missed it. If you just keep hitting the same questions over and over again, missing the same kind, and not thinking about why, you're never really going to improve. You might improve incidentally, but it's really going to be just a byproduct of seeing the same question so many times. The most helpful thing is to recognize the patterns between the questions, because the types of questions actually repeat fairly frequently. And that not only makes you faster at filling out or solving the problems themselves, it makes you more aware of how you can efficiently use your time to improve. A final thing to consider is that even though the LSAT is a daunting and long process, it's not nearly going to be the most daunting thing you face in your legal career. As you're preparing for the LSAT, if you find that the process is inherently super unenjoyable, that you've never done anything so hard in your entire life, that it's really, really, really uphill to get the questions, you may just not be suited for the type of work that a lawyer does. I mean, that's not a judgment or a good or bad thing. It's just some parts of the LSAT do actually track the way that legal work operates in a pretty specific way. If the thing that you hate about the LSAT the most is the constrained time and, the requirement that you sit through this long, tedious process, that may be fine. I mean, you may find some kind of legal work that doesn't involve those things. But if the thing you hate about the LSAT is having to carefully read complicated sentences and parse out specific detailed meanings, if that's what you hate about the LSAT, you probably are not going to like legal work, because that is a big part of it. So I think in the process of studying, it's a good opportunity to be really honest with yourself, not only about the type of work that you enjoy, but what your future is going to look like after this test is over. Because even though while you're studying for the test, it can feel like the most important, looming big thing in your life, it's really just a stepping stone to a ton of other challenges that lie ahead. I hope you guys found this video useful. Please let me know if you have any great LSAT study tips or tricks. If you have resources that you particularly liked or didn't like, and I wish you all the very best of luck in your studying endeavors. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.